Hello to everybody in St Bartholomew's Primary School, and especially to everybody in Key Stage 2, in Mrs. Farnell's class, and in Mrs. Sedgwick's class. Hello to all of you. Now, I have heard a rumour that you are reading a story called The Great Chocoplot. Well, that's fantastic to hear that, because I have read this book. In fact, I wrote this book because I am Chris. That's me there, Chris Callaghan, and I am the author of The Great Chocoplot. So it is wonderful to hear that you have been reading my story, my silly story about the end of chocolate. I hope it hasn't given you chocolate nightmares. But I've also heard that you've been doing lots of work around the story as well. You've been writing some newspaper articles. You've been doing stuff in geography as well, researching about cocoa beans and the rainforests, and learning lots and lots of things about, those kind of tropical rainforests and things like that. And you've also been doing some work in drama as well. I've heard that you've been, pretending or acting as if you're some of the characters in this story and being interviewed as well. So I hope you've had a lot of fun doing all of that. That does sound like a lot of fun. I'm sure I would like to have seen some of those interviews. I bet that was quite funny to do as well, wasn't it? So yes, so it is wonderful to hear that you've been doing all that. So thank you very much. Now, I have also been given some questions, because earlier on, Mrs. Farnell, maybe Mrs. Sedgwick, asked you some questions, if you were to maybe put these to the author of The Great Chocoplot. Well, they have sneaked these questions onto me, because they're a sneaky bunch, them teachers. So yes, and they've passed those questions on to me, and I've got them here, so I'm going to try and answer them, okay? So the first question was, how do you come up with your ideas? Well, ideas are everywhere. I think it's hard not to come up with ideas, and especially in your wonderful school. I think there's, you look around you, you look at all the different characters that are in your class, that are in your year, that are in your school. Look at all the teachers, and think of all the crazy things you maybe do during those lessons, or the crazy things that happen on the way to school or during break time, because there's always lots and lots of things happening. And even when you're doing things like geography or whatever, or doing your drama, I'm sure you came up with lots and lots of ideas, while you were doing that. I think ideas are everywhere. You've just got to make sure that you grab a hold of them. Maybe write them down when you get a little bit of an idea about something. So I think ideas are everywhere. Now, another question is, do you like chocolate? Well, what do you think? What do you think? Who doesn't like chocolate? I mean, I know there are a few people who don't quite like chocolate, but of course, I love chocolate. I mean, that's one of the great things about writing a story about chocolate is I get to eat lots of chocolate. I mean, I've even got a few empty wrappers here. Yes, that's not a very good sign, is it? Lots of empty wrappers of chocolate, yes, kicking around. Yes, maybe had too much chocolate while I was writing this story, and ever since, because whenever I talk about it, whenever anybody talks about chocolate, your mouth starts to salivate and water, and your tummy starts to rumble, doesn't it? It's always hard not to have a little bit of chocolate while you've talked about chocolate. So yes, of course, I do love chocolate, and some of my favourites. It's hard to pick a favourite, because there's so many different types of chocolate, isn't there? Sometimes, it depends what mood you're in. Sometimes you're in the mood for something with a nice soft centre, maybe like a Dairy Milk caramel there, or just a nice good plain chocolate like a Galaxy or a Mars bar, something nice and chewy, or something with a bit of biscuit in there as well. You can get chocolate bars with bits of Oreo in there. So it's hard to choose a favourite bar of chocolate. I like them all. I want them all. I mean, if you were to think, what's your favourite bar of chocolate? You'd probably think, too many to choose from. So that's one of the nice things about chocolate, isn't it? There's so many different types to choose from. Next question was, do you have a child the same age as Jelly? Well, I wrote this story quite a long time ago, so yes, my daughter was about 8-year-old then. I think that's probably a little bit younger than Jelly, but when I wrote Jelly, I kind of pictured her, or wanted her to be a kind of a friend of my daughter. So that's why I kind of chose but I chose the kind of character of Jelly. I imagined that my daughter and Jelly would get on quite well, and they're quite similar. So I think, yes, there's a lot of, when you're writing stories, when you're writing characters, you do borrow little bits from other people. And I think there's a lot of Jelly in my daughter, or there's a lot of my daughter in Jelly. So yes, that's a good question though. Are you planning on writing a Great Chocoplot 2? It's not planned. I must admit, I'm sorry about that. I mean, that's very nice that you're asking that, because you're obviously enjoying it enough to think if there's anything more. I'm not sure if you've got to the end of it just yet. But when you get to the end of it, maybe you could write a story about what happens next. I do have a few ideas involving certain things about it, but it's not a direct sequel. But again, I've just got too many ideas. I am trying to write and doing a few other things at the moment. But a Chocoplot sequel is not planned yet, so maybe that's a job for all of you. Next question is, where do you sit when you are writing stories? Well, quite often I sit right here. This is a little spare room that I've got. I've sort of stolen away from the rest of the family, put all my junk in it. That my wife and daughter call it. I don't think it's junk. It's books and records and music and everything, and I like it. So it's a nice environment to sit and write. But sometimes I quite often write wherever I need to be. Sometimes, because I've got a little dog. My dog gets a bit restless when he's in here, and he's always pawing at me. He's always going, come downstairs and play with me. He's always saying things like that. So I do quite a go downstairs, and as long as I've got a table or a laptop, I can just type away, wherever I am, really. But it's nice to be in a nice room, a quiet room, and shut the door and just get on with it. I like to listen to some music as well while I'm writing, so it gets me in the mood for for different things. So so it's basically here a lot of the time. Right, next question is, well, what inspired you to write the Great Chocoplot? Well, it was a little accidental happening that kind of happened. We opened our kitchen drawer, which we normally used to keep chocolate in there, and there was no chocolate in there. And I said to my daughter, as we looked in horror at this empty drawer, I says, "Oh, it's a bit of a chocolate apocalypse, a bit of a chocopocalypse." And that's where this story came from. That's where that idea just came from, that one little idea. So that's what I'm saying. Ideas are everywhere, and you write them down. If you get a good idea, you write them down. How long did it take you to write the story? Well, I wrote the first version, because I wrote it for my daughter at first, and this was the very first copy, what's called a draft copy. It's a very rough version, and there's lots of things wrong with it. If you notice there, it's actually called the Chocopocalypse. That was the original name of it, but it got changed to the Great Chocoplot, which I do like that title, but I do like the Chocopocalypse. It's quite a silly name, isn't it? So it took me maybe a good few months to write this, but then once it gets in the hands of the publishers, to turn it into a proper book, that was another 2 years. We fiddled around with this for 2 years. So from having the first idea in my head to having a book on a bookshelf in a bookshop or in a library, that was about 3 years in total. So sometimes it takes quite a long time. I'm quite slow at typing. I only use 2 fingers for typing. I'm a bit rubbish, really. Right. Next question. Why did you become a children's author? Well, you know what? I didn't really plan on becoming a children's author. I've had lots of, normal jobs. I used to be in the military. I used to be in the Air Force, fixing aircraft. So I used to be an engineer, and then I left that to become an environmental scientist. So I used to go into factories and measure for pollution and do lots of things like that. But I was always writing stories, and I always had stories bouncing around in my head. So, and that's just what happened. I kept on writing stories, and then I decided to write this long story for my daughter, and it became a published book. So I didn't really plan on it happening, but I'm very glad that it did. Last question here. Would you like the book turned into a film? Well, who wouldn't? Yes, wouldn't that? I would love that. I would love that. Not just for the money, cha-ching. It would be nice, but to see, all my characters brought to life on the big screen, that would be wonderful. And then maybe after that, a musical. Do you think? You think? I think a musical would be good. They would make a lot of fun with Chocopocalypse, with the lyrics. They could. I don't know what rhymes with Chocopocalypse. No, I'll leave that up to you to think about it. But wouldn't that be good? I think that would be marvelous. So yes, a film would be fantastic. So everybody, keep your fingers crossed, and that might happen. You never know. Stranger things have happened. But if lots of people buy the book and talk about it and shout about it, then maybe people will go, oh, maybe we should make a film about that. That would be fantastic. So so thank you very much. I mean, what I am doing at the moment, or what I have just been doing, I've been writing a whole different series of books. Maybe you might, grab a hold of these, find some of these in your school at some point. Shinoy and the Chaos Crew, got to get the advertising in here. But I've done some little stories, short stories, and some graphic novels, some comics based on these, full of action and adventure. So maybe once you've finished reading the Great Chocoplot, maybe you can investigate Shinoy and the Chaos Crew. That would be fantastic. But for now, thank you for reading my story. It is great to hear that you all in St Bartholomew's have been enjoying it. And yes, say hello to Mrs. Farnell and Mrs. Sedgwick for me as well. Mind you, don't leave your chocolate lying around when they're around, okay? Because they can sniff out chocolate from quite a distance, and you might find that it disappears. So keep your chocolate safely to yourselves. But keep on having fun at school. It sounds like you're having a great time, and I hope you read lots more books in the rest of the year, which I'm sure you will. So it is wonderful to hear you've been reading The Great Chocoplot. So thank you very much, and take care of yourselves. Bye. It's been a pleasure. Bye now.